For starters, my name is Wesley Holloway. And the primary businesses that we operate, we actually have a couple, really are just managing brands that are in the cannabis space or the traditional CBD hemp space. Current position is founder and CEO, which, as the founder role, what do I do? A little bit of everything. Some days it's inventory, some days it's checking on our sales team, but really just overseeing the business and growing the business is truly my direct role day to day. So I have a MBA from Southern Nazarene, and before that I got my chemistry degree from the University of Central Oklahoma out there in Edmond, Oklahoma. My work background is, I would say, quite diverse. I grew up watching my dad, who was always entrepreneurial, and so I always knew that I wanted to go that route. So right out of college, I started off working in his back office. He's a physician, so working on medical billing, really just learning the medical space. And from there, I just got very close with a lot of the pharmaceutical sales reps and said, there's probably something to that. And actually started off a medical distribution company with one of my close friends from college, selling hardware, DME, which is, back braces, things like that. And we also sold a lot of lab panels. So once, we got through with the medical sales thing, that kind of wrapped up, it really segued into the cannabis industry. Whenever cannabis was legalized in Oklahoma, the back end of 2018, it seemed like a good opportunity to be one of the first ones in. So we started off a distribution company and have since, scaled to where we're at today. Oof, I've had a lot of help and continue to need help, to be honest with you. To start, really, my dad has been, I would say, a silent helper. Probably he's provided help that he's completely unaware of. But just seeing someone, wake up day to day and really grind it out for himself has been very motivational for me. I think that's where a lot of my entrepreneurial spirit comes from. I've had tremendous mentors along the way. There's a local investor that has really, I would say, bought into me as a person, and has really rode with me for a long time. Not just financially, but, has shared his business experiences. And so I've been able to, finally just stop talking and listen whenever people like that in my life talk about their experience. And so, really start off with just my father and Bob, our local investor here. For the most part, I do. Running the company is something that I'm pretty hell-bent on doing for myself. So from that viewpoint, I definitely enjoy that. There's definitely parts of the job that I was unaware of when I started. But, you take it in stride and you do what you need to do to really foresee your own freedom. Working for yourself and being an entrepreneur, I see that as, me being free, and being blessed to do what I want to do day in and day out. I'd go back to the freedom piece, and not necessarily, people when they hear that, think, okay, yeah, you get to make your own schedule, but it's really, I'm free to be creative. I'm free to act on my own ideas, good or bad, which, there's lessons in the latter there. But that is the number one thing that I love about, any of my jobs or career paths is just being able to really create and walk my own path, good or bad. The question was worst part of the job, but I'll kind of deflect that and say the hardest part of my job is really managing people. Managing expectations. That was part of the, job description that I missed under the entrepreneurial definition. But there's, so many nuances to just connect with people. And as you scale your company, that's more connections that you need to be diligent of. and really respectful of day to day, which is something that I was really unprepared for. And so, I won't say that's the worst part of the job, but I will say for me, that's been the most difficult part of the job. Yes and no. I would say my industry is not for the faint of heart. You definitely got to have that entrepreneurial spirit. Cannabis is tough. It's an industry that is still federally illegal, which brings its own challenges, especially when it comes to the financial side of the industry. It's essentially a cash-starved industry. When anyone else in a traditional business needs a bank loan, they go to the bank and they can go pull the loan. There really is no traditional lending in our industry, which makes everything that much more difficult. And it's also an industry that is full of first-time business owners. I'm not the only one that is, kind of building this path for ourselves. And so there's challenges in that, there's mistakes that I make because I am a first-time business owner, and that just gets amplified the more people that you work with. So, yeah. We've had a couple. We chalked up quite a few wins, but we've chalked up quite a few failures as well. Let me think. The biggest failure that I think we have had. Well, we've had to shut down a few entities. Really, I would say our co-packing industry, or not industry, but our co-packing entity. We had a very robust business where we were recruiting and bringing in national brands through our production infrastructure and pushing them through our distribution. And what we did not realize is just how capital intensive a manufacturing business truly is. And at that point we were self-funded, and so we were relying heavily on our cash flow. And when the industry shifted, it shifted not in our favor, and we lost that business and had to lay off, 30 plus employees, which was painful. So, in hindsight, I'd say that's probably my biggest personal failure was, having to close down our manufacturing business. As of today, I would say the biggest successes really have been the relationships we've been able to cultivate and build on. Some of our brands, we've had the blessing of being able to launch them in now 5+ markets, which is not something everyone in our industry is able to do. And a lot of that has to do with the people around us, not necessarily, what we're doing correctly or what we're doing right day in and day out. It's truly the relationships that we've been able to build and truly rely on to get us to where we're at today. And I think that's going to be the key to our success moving forward as well, is just truly relying on other people throughout the supply chain, relying on mentors to give us sound advice, relying on suppliers to deliver on time. I think the best advice that I could give to anyone, and this not necessarily following my path in the cannabis industry, just following the path as an entrepreneur, is to really find someone that truly cares about you and ask for help. Be radically open to receiving help, to receiving criticism, and listening to that and reflecting on that. Because we all are just made up of our own life experiences and how we're applying those experiences. So to truly tap into someone older or someone that's done this before, or anyone else that truly, again, just cares about you personally and wants to see you win, I would highly advise, before you take the first step, is to find someone like that, put them in your corner, explain to them your plan, your vision, and why you seek their help and their thoughts. Just really have that open conversation, and again, being radically open-minded to listening and receiving sound wisdom. Our very first run was actually, self-funded out of the gate. Me and one of my closest friends growing up, Tugger Kaysen, he was a commercial real estate guy in Dallas at the time, and doing really well there. And I was running my medical sales distribution company. And we found that the distribution angle would be our easiest entry into the marketplace. So I think maybe he put up $7,500 and I put up the last $7,500, and we bought our first round of product from our first customer and really just started self-distributing from there. But quickly found out that we are going to need to take in some additional funding to truly scale the company the way that we thought we needed to scale it, which came from a local investor, and that process, it was our first time ever raising capital. It was my first time even talking to an investor. At one point I thought we could take on the world by ourselves, but we learned otherwise. And so, that was actually a great experience. In hindsight, just what the investor had us present to even release funds, it really made us look at our business differently. Before that, we were just selling product, collecting cash, buying more product, selling that, scaling up that cycle. But there was no true thought about the bottom line, no true thought about infrastructure and how do we appropriately build infrastructure and deploy capital, whether it was for inventory financing or for that infrastructure. That was never in our train of thought. So being able to tap into that investor, not just for the funds, but also for the knowledge and really building a true book of business, that experience was second to none. But yeah, our funding, when we did take in funding, it was actually for an extraction company that we had started. I think we brought in, what was it for our first raise? I think it was about $350,000, which got us out of the gate and really, took off from there. Oof, yeah, so well, the business breaking even depends on the day. I would say depends on the month, month to month. Last month we did have a profitable month. The 2 months prior, to be frank and honest, they weren't profitable. The swings in our industry are tough to really keep up with. So it really, that question still depends month to month, honestly. It feels right now we are hitting a pretty solid stride, and that has come with a reduction of some expenses, and really just tweaking the business to be profitable. But there's also a definition of profitable. We can look at a P&L sheet and say, okay, yeah, we made some profits this week. But when it's time to go grow the business, which is, we're still in growth mode, there's the reinvestment piece of those profits. So really, we have not truly realized profits just yet. When I say realized profits, like pulled a distribution, partner distribution to pay ourselves. But we have gotten the businesses to a place where we can comfortably pay ourselves every 30 days, pay our staff. But yeah, to say we were completely profitable last month, sure, last month. But the 2 months prior took an L. But it's a strategic loss now. It's not an unknown loss, which at one point, it felt like we were always making money. And in hindsight, once we dug through the books, we weren't. So. I'd say probably took us a good 12 to 18 months, honestly, for us to say, okay, let's pull money and pay ourselves. And some of that had to do with how we looked at being business owners. We thought we should pay ourselves last and pay everyone else first. And we've since learned that that's not always, the best route to go. Because if you don't have any money personally, but you got a pool of money in your business account, it's pretty easy to, pull money when you don't need to. So yeah, I would say about 12 to 18 months is a realistic time frame if you start a business the same way we did, which is, self-funded, light on cash, relying on heavy cash flow to scale. In hindsight, I think we would have just done a capital raise once we had proof of concept. And part of that capital raise would probably be, salaries or some kind of stipend for myself, my partners, to live comfortably on while we truly scale the business. Well, going back to question one, we have a few different businesses, so I'll answer that question for the first business that we started and maybe the most recent one. The first business that we started, truthfully, we did not have a rock solid business plan, and kind of, stuck our nose up to even spending the time to make a rock solid business plan. We felt comfortable in our ability to sell product, felt comfortable in the marketplace, and you times that with some early on success, it started to feel like we were in the right place and didn't need a business plan to do so. Fast forward a few years to our most recent brand that we've launched now, and that does have a 12-page business plan, and it is something that we can now reference when we're raising capital. It is something that we can use as a tool to say, yes, we are competent, yes, we do have a plan to execute on. And so really planning is critical. And it's a shame that we missed it out of the gate. We were always taught growing up, what was it? Failing to prepare is preparing to fail. And that is so true across really any platform in life. There's some people that laugh at being rigid and structured. And I used to laugh at being rigid and structured until I saw the benefit of that. But really being able to put a plan on paper allows you to now visualize the plan. And once you have a true vision of that plan, you can tell it to someone else, and then you can put it in practice and really go execute. So I think planning is the absolute key to anyone's success. I'd say our big break had a lot to do with just the marketplace and the industry that we were in. Cannabis was introduced to Oklahoma or legalized in Oklahoma in 2018. And we had, for being a very conservative state, had some of the most liberal cannabis laws at the time that this country had seen. Most other states, it's $500,000 to $1 million to get a license and have to be fully vertical, meaning you have to touch the entire supply chain. But in Oklahoma, it's $2,500, and as long as you filled out the application correctly, they awarded you the license. And so with that, there were so many national brands coming here, so many people hungry for entrepreneurship that got into business. And at one point, all of that just culminated into a very robust marketplace. And I think our big break had a lot to do with being at the right place at the right time. My very first business partner that we started with, Tucker, always said, luck doesn't find you, you go find your luck. And you find your luck by waking up, pounding the pavement, and going to work every single day. And we did that. And we had a team of individuals that believed that. They did that as well. So a mix of marketplace conditions and just showing up day in and day out was truthfully, our big break. There was no one aha moment or not one deal that really put us over the top. It was a compounding effect, truthfully, of showing up and executing on repeat. I'll start with the long-term goals, because that one, I said I didn't have a plan, but the long-term goal has been the same since day one. It's to build a book of business that carries value that one day we can sell. I've read a book called Built to Sell for the first time probably about 10 years ago. And ever since then, I've just been kind of hooked on the idea of starting a business, growing that business, and one day selling it to a strategic partner or someone that makes sense, that can carry the business further than what I could carry it. In the short term, again, we're in growth mode right now. So to growth under control this time though. We've had a few whacks at this and have always been successful growing our business. Sales have never been our issue. But I would say our short-term goal is to see the controlled growth, to see profitable growth, and to continue to execute on the vision that we've laid out. Yeah, and I never want to be the one to complain, because I'm usually the one that says, lay out the rules, make them clear, and everyone can play ball. I would say the biggest regulatory hurdle in the cannabis industry is really the shifting of regulations. In these states, to be fair to them, they've never had to regulate cannabis. And so they're looking at the state over to see how they did it, to see where their pitfalls are, and doing their best to lay out a framework of rules that not only just keep the consumer safe, but also allow for business to flourish. And look, no state has gotten it right out of the gate. Everyone has to go back to the drawing board after the first round of licenses are issued for one reason or another. To give you a couple examples, Oklahoma, we're in a current moratorium of licenses because of the saturation in this marketplace. There's just too many licenses that are active. Then you kick over to markets like Illinois. That was a market that was controlled by 7 licenses for the first 5 years. And so you look at that marketplace and said, well, we probably did a little too much regulation and control on that marketplace. And in both instances, and every other legalized state's in the same boat, it's right back to the drawing board and changing the rules. So keeping up with ever-changing rules on licensing, renewing the license, who we can sell to, how we can sell it, what we can sell, truly changes every 12 to 18 months. So really having someone that knows compliance, lives compliance, and loves doing that is absolutely critical to anyone's success in this industry. I look at the risk, I don't want to say any risk is fake. To answer the question, the biggest risk to our industry is if the feds act on the illegality of the industry. I think it was President Obama who signed something that said that the feds were not going to interject in these state programs. But, one wrong election, one wrong lobbying, and the feds could say all of this is going away overnight. And at that point, that washes away years of hard work, years of capital, and a lot of, really just a lot of dreams would get wiped away overnight. Now, I don't particularly see that happening, but that is the heavy cloud that still hangs over our industry. And so I would say from a regulatory standpoint, that's probably the biggest risk that all of us are looking at that are participating in the space. If I wasn't in cannabis, we probably would have touched bankruptcy, honestly. With us being federally illegal and bankruptcy being a federal program, a lot of people don't know that. Cannabis companies actually cannot file for bankruptcy as of today. But, going back to our production and manufacturing companies failing, that kind of was a waterfall effect. As soon as one went down, the others kind of fell in line until we had to stop, reset everything, let a lot of people go. And whatever debt that we had at that time, I was personally tied to half of it, and my partner was personally tied to the other half of it. And so if bankruptcy was an option at that point in time, that would have been the best option for us. But, blessings come in weird ways, because bankruptcy's there for a reason. I would never say it's a cop-out. I have very personal, people that are insanely close to me that have filed bankruptcy out of necessity. And again, we probably would have done the same if we could have. But not being able to, it forced us to stand in it, to really look at the mess that we made, and it forced us to start cleaning it up. instead of just, filing bankruptcy and closing that chapter of our life and moving on, which would have been nice. I definitely would have appreciated that. But again, just having those lessons of having to stand in it, face it, face the people that got stuck holding the bag, it really made us better for it in the end. That's kind of the toughest piece for us, and it's easing up now. There's kind of this weird phenomenon going on in our industry right now where these hemp-derived products, whether they're CBD or THC, are federally legal under the 2018 Farm Bill, which has allowed us to start marketing direct to consumer via social media platforms. But before that, it was pretty much email campaigns and pounding the pavement. And when I say pounding the pavement, showing up, walking into the dispensaries, walking into our vendors' shops, which allowed us to build relationships. Everything in this world is very relationship driven. So in one aspect, there was some value that could be found in that. But there's also, we're living in a very media driven world, a very tech driven world. So without being able to use those utensils for so long, you just kind of learned how to hustle. But as the dynamic shifts, we've really tapped in heavy to the email campaigns. We've done quite a bit of geo-targeting, and have just recently invested pretty heavily in social media marketing. So we're hoping to see some payoff for that in the next few months. I'll start with the partner side because that one's easiest for me because all of my partners are personal friends of mine. We started very first business, started with my childhood best friend. Our first two minority partners that we brought on were some of our closest friends that we made in college. And then our company today is still owned by me and another friend from high school. So, the partners have always been an interesting dynamic for sure. Personally, we all love each other, but sometimes that love and conflict, amplifies the conflict because there is that history there. But at the end of the day, it's been great. I never have to worry about, can I trust my partner? Because that trust has been laid and it's been there for 10 plus years. Now the employee side of it, again, that's something that was new to me. And so managing those relationships, I consider myself to be very personable, good, bad, or indifferent. I do like to be liked, but sometimes there is a owner-employee dynamic that I often overlooked. I wanted everyone to be my friend, and when it was time to, be my friend as well as my employee, sometimes I won't say it was a lack of respect, but it was, sometimes I did not get everything I needed out of my employees. And in hindsight, that was on how I structured the relationship. It was more personal than it was professional. And so that's something that I had to learn the hard way. While I still like to be liked, I think it's most important to bring value to someone as an employee, make sure they know that their work is meaningful, but also let them know that we're here for work, not to hang out, socialize, and talk. So I think there is a fine line of, personal and professional that I definitely struggled with early on, and probably still struggle with a little bit as of today. We are, and that's actually probably the most proud thing that I am of our businesses today. It actually started with one of the brands that we currently have is a brand called Trees Premium Cannabis, and it's pre-rolls, vape carts, infused pre-rolls. But our partner, who's one of our friends from high school, he had always given a donation for every unit sold to the Eden Reforestation Project, which is a nonprofit group that really just plants trees. They fight deforestation around the world, not just in America. And so that brand has always made a donation for every unit sold. And then we have another brand called Benevolent Bakery. And as the name states, we also give a donation for every unit sold. So here in Oklahoma, for every box sold, we give 10% back to the Homeless Alliance. In Missouri, we work with a platform called Exit Together. In Arkansas, we work with the Hunger Alliance. And in Montana, we work with an organization called Eagle Mount. So, the vision and plan behind actually all the projects that we're currently working on is to take a piece of proceeds and give it back to something that, needs attention, whether it's, they need our service, they need our money, or just need some help in any other way. We do try to give back on every project that we're currently working on. Nothing that's documented, but I have over time learned the importance of having a self-care plan. When you start your own business, it truly is like your own baby. And sometimes it's hard to set it down, especially if you feel like you're in a point of turmoil. You can never shut that off, but you can only run like that for so long before it starts taking a toll on your mental, taking a toll on you physically. For a while, we had a lot of close friends around me, and I probably lost 20 to 30 pounds in our midst of turmoil, just from working all the time, not eating, not working out, not taking care of myself. And in turn, that negatively affects our business. So I do have, I'd call it a self-care plan. I think that actually is a good word for it. It's just that if it's past 8 p.m., I'm probably not calling you back until tomorrow. I do try to get off my computer by 6:30, spend some intentional time with my girlfriend, who's been an absolute rock throughout this journey, but really just shutting off the devices and kind of, turning off the work world until 4:30 in the morning, and then we get right back to it. I'd say the best way to find us online, our main parent company is Watrhouse Brands. So you can check out the website there. We have the Benevolent Bakery website, which does a quick about us. And then what's really grown in popularity is LinkedIn. So I do have a LinkedIn profile that has connections to all of the websites and all of the brands and all of the entities that we're currently operating, and a quick little about me, So yeah, I'd probably start with LinkedIn now that we've talked through it.